Okay. Kum len and Ablat Kaboretz, B'Tzei Shabbos Kedesh Parshas Kisisa. We are up to Masechta Chagigah Daf Yud Amud Aleph, and we are up to the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, Heter Nedarim. The Mishnah says like this, that there can be a number of laws that we are going to mention here that are sacrosanct, yet they have very, I guess, vague basis in the Torah, but we do it because the Chacham told us and was passed down from Sinai. So 3 categories. Number 1, Heter Nedarim. Somebody makes a vow or an oath, and then you want to annul it. You go to a bezin of 3 individuals, or you go to a Yachid Mumche, a single expert. The basis of annulling a vow is Porchin Ba'aver. We just started the Mishnah and Daf Yud Amud Aleph. The basis for annulling a vow is really like a bird flying in the air. There's nothing solid there, but the Ein Lehem Mamash Yismachu, they don't really have any pasuk in the Torah that they can rely on, but nevertheless we follow it. Next category, Hilchas Shabbos. Some of the laws of Shabbos, which Gemara will highlight. Chagigahs, a law of a Chagigah, which we are going to, or the concept of Chagigahs, we'll see. And Bahami'ilas, if somebody uses items that were consecrated for the Beis Hamikdash, they are considered, if they did it inadvertently, they're stealing, and they have to pay the principal, they have to pay a penalty, and plus they bring a guilt offering. The penalty is 25% and a guilt offering. They are all kaharim. These are mountain of laws. Hatluyim besayr. They are hanging on a hair. So this is a bit more than before. Before you had nothing. Here at least you have a hair. And why is that compared to a mountain on a hair? She'mikra mu'at, only a few psukim of halachas merubas, but there are many laws. Category number 3, the hadinin, commercial law, the avodas, and the laws of serving when it comes to a carbon. The hataris, the laws of taharis, the hatmeis, the laws of tumah, the aroyis, and the laws of erva, the laws of incest or adultery. Yesh lahen amash yizko. There already we have psukim that we can rely on, and but you should know the hein gufei Torah. This is the essence of Torah, and we'll see the more later. Not only the last part of the Mishnah, but the entire Mishnah, even the parts that are so vague, it's all part of the Torah. And now the Gemara, till the end of the Perek, today and tomorrow, is going to discuss each one of these laws, which particular law you're referring to when you say there's no basis or just built on here. Tanya will learn. First, we have a brisa that completely opposes our Mishnah. Our Mishnah says that annulling a vow has no basis. The brisa says, yes, it does. Rabbi Lezer says, in fact, we'll have 5 different sources for it. Rabbi Lezer says, yes, there is a basis for annulling a vow. Shenema. It says when it comes to erchin, when somebody says, I'm going to donate to the Beis Hamikdash my value, my erech, my fixed values that's fixed in the Torah uses the expression ki yafli. When you express your vow, it says the word ki yafli. Another time it says by a nazir. When it says by a nazir, that if you are going to make a vow to become a nazir, again, it uses the word yafli. Shtei it says twice. Why does it use such a strange expression, yafli? Achas hafloli is one is talking about if you want to accept upon yourself a vow. So you use the word yafli, which means to spell it out. And we're 3 lines in the Gemara and Daf Yud Amud Aleph. And but achas hafloli, the other one is you want to cancel, you want to annul your vow, and you go to a bezin. So the second yafli is that you can annul a vow. And the way you annul a vow is you go to a bezin and you say, look, either you say I have charata, I regret making the vow in the first place, or you say to the bezin finds you an opening. The bezin says, if you would have known the circumstances that would be tomorrow, would you have made the ned in the first place? And if you say no, that's called a pesach, and you annul your vow. So basically, so we're in the Gemara now. We're 4 lines into the Gemara. Our Mishnah is telling us here there are a number of laws that are not clearly written in the Torah, but we nevertheless, and they're from the Torah, will pass down generation to generation. The first one we're discussing is the idea of annulling a vow, and the Gemara brings a brisa that annulling a vow, nowhere is written in the Torah that you have the right that after you made an oath or a vow you can annul it. You go to a bezdin and you can get them cancel it. But we bring a brisa where we're going to have 5 different opinions on where they have a basis. So the first one is, it says, when it talks about making a vow, it uses the word kiyafli, which is a strange word. When you express yourself, it says it twice. One to tell you can express your vow, another one to tell you how to rescind your vow. Then further in the Gemara, Rabbi Yeshua, 4 lines into the Gemara, Rabbi Yeshua says, Yesh lehem ashma yizchud. There's another basis in the Torah that if someone makes a vow, he can rescind. Shenemar, it says, you can annul it. It says Hashem, we say this in davening every Friday night. Hashem says, Hashem nishbati v'api, that I swore while I was angry. If they ever go into Israel, they're talking about the Yidden who were involved in the story of the spies. Will they ever make it to Israel? I swore that they'll never make it to Israel. Or the other view is they'll never go to Olam Haba. So it sounds like Ba'api nishbaiti. I swore when I was angry. Why do you have to tell us that you did it while you're angry? Just say you swore. I swore when I was angry, but I changed my mind. So we see what you can annul a vow. Opinion number 3. Rabbi Yitzchak says, I'll bring another basis. Yesh l'mashir, that what to rely on. It says in the pasuk that kol nediv leiv. I want everyone to donate to the base of Mikdash. All those who were generous enough, who gave from the heart, they should bring the truma to Hashem. So what do you mean nediv leiv? As if to say, as long as they're in the mood of giving, they made a vow, they have to keep it. But if, let's say, they're no longer in the mood of giving, even though they made a vow, they can go to a bezdin and annul their vow. Again, we see another basis for annulling a vow. Comes along Hananiah ben Achir Rabbi Yeshua. Hananiah, the nephew of Yeshua, is helping another basis. Yesh lehem mamash is going to have a basis for it. Remember, it says, David Melech said, Nishbaiti, I swore, Bakayema, I will keep Lishmar Mishpatetikach, I will keep your mitzvahs. This is to say, if I don't want to keep it, I don't have to. What do you mean you don't have to? You made a vow, because I can always annul it. Amr Rabbi Mishmul. Comes along Rabbi Yehuda named Mishmul. He's an Amoira. These were all Tanoim. He was an Amoira. These are, look, if I would be a Tana and I would have lived in those times, Amilu, I would have told them, my basis is better than all yours. Remember, it says, Loy yachel devari. The pasuk said a person makes a vow or a shvua, then he should not breach his words. Loy yachel devari, his words, as if to say, you cannot breach it, but others can. Who can? Your bezdin. Who ain't a moichel? Others can breach it. The kul is the pircha. Every Tana's basis can be repudiated. Lebar midishmul. The only one that stays strong is Shmuel, who was only an Amoira. The less lepircha, you can't ask any questions. Now the Gemara will go through each one and explain that there's other alternative explanations to these psukim, so you're not necessarily forced to learn that you can annul your vow. Let's go through each one. The first one was Rabbi Lezer says kiyafli twice, and you think the second kiyafli tell you that you can express your regrets and therefore cancel your neder. No, maybe it's coming to tell you something totally different. The din of Rab Tarfon. What is the din of Rab Tarfon? Rab Tarfon has an interesting case. 2 people are sitting there and chatting along, and they see somebody sauntering down the street. So one of them says, they were having a wager. So I know what, I'll make a wager. That if that person is a Nazir, I will become a Nazir as well. And the other person says, I'll tell you what, if that person is not a Nazir, I will become a Nazir. So at the end of the day, one of these 2 friends will become a Nazir. Either he is or he isn't. But nevertheless, Rab Tarfon says neither of them becomes a Nazir. You know why? Because the Torah uses the word kiyafli, when you become a Nazir, you have to express it clearly. It has to be patently clear to everybody at the time that you said it. And because you didn't know at the time when you said it whether you will be or not, 50-50 chance, it's not kiyafli, you're not a Nazir. So that's what we need kiyafli for, not to tell you can annul a vow. The Tanya really ain't echad mehem nazir. Neither of them are nazir. Shall nit the naziras ella flaw. Nazir was not given only to have flaw, only to be clear. So therefore, nothing to do with canceling an end. Next one. Even Rabbi Yeshua, if we're going to follow Rabbi Yeshua, he said, because we say in davening, Ashen or Tehillim, Ashen nishbati be'api. I swore when I was angry, but now I changed my mind. No, that's not what it means. Maybe just quite the contrary. True, I swore when I was angry, but now it's too late. I'm stuck. But I didn't change my mind. I can't change my mind. I cannot cancel. How do you know which way to learn? Now, it seems that the first way the Gemara learned that Hashem meant to say that I'm angry, and as long as I'm angry, I'm going to maintain my rage. But as soon as I'm not angry, I'm going to change my mind. The second Gemara said, no, maybe not. Maybe it means I'm angry and I'll always be angry, and I cannot change my mind. So what's going on here? There's an interesting argument between Rashi and Tosfos that we learned in Gemara Tainis and it's also Gemara Babasar. What happened to Ba'av? So Gemara said that every year on Tisha B'Av, all the Jews they dig themselves in their own graves and they would lie down there. And then the following morning, all those who were stood up obviously remained alive, and the other ones passed away. Came the last year, the final year, Tisha B'Av, they went into the graves. Nothing happened. They went to Yud B'Av, Yud Aleph, Yud Beis. On Tu B'Av, the full moon, they realized they weren't making any mistakes. They realized the Gzeira is over. So that's why Tu B'Av we celebrate such a festive day. According to Rashi, according to Taisus, so what's the festive day? The festive day is that the people who were meant to die on the 40th year didn't die. Hashem canceled his decree. He spared the lives of the last, whatever it was, 18,000, 19,000 people. He spared, or 21,000 people. He spared their lives because over 39 years. And that's the Yom Tov of Tu B'Av. In other words, Hashem changed his mind. That's how the Gemara learned the first way. But the other opinion says, I hold like Rashi. Rashi says that the Gzeira stopped because everybody died already. The entire 600,000 died. The Gzeira didn't change. So according to Rashi, what was the Yom Tov Tu B'Av? The only reason why they stopped dying is because there's no one left to die. It was between the age of 20 and 60. So what's the Yom Tov? The Yom Tov was, as the Gemara says in Tainus, that Hashem stopped talking to Moshe for 38 years. But when, after Tu B'Av, when the people stopped dying, Hashem revisited Moshe and talked to him with love. That's the Yom Tov. Not that people stopped dying, but the fact that Hashem spoke to Moshe Rabbeinu again. So in other words, Hashem did not change his mind. And that's the second view here in the Gemara. Hashem did not change his mind. That's the argument. Okay, then the Gemara continues. Even the Rabbi Yitzchak, if you can use the Rabbi Yitzchak who says, Kol Nediv Lev, as long as you're in the mood of being generous, otherwise you can change your mind. Who said? Maybe in a Div Lev, the common teacher something totally different, and that is the Dilmala Fukim in Shmuel. Maybe it comes to argue. Shmuel says that when you make a vow, you have to verbalize it. Maybe the pasuk is telling you in the Div Lev that you don't have to verbalize it. It's in your heart, and that's it. It remains there forever. Says the Gemara. What's the Shmuel? Shmuel said, "Gomar beliba." If you made up your mind to make a vow, whatever, you have to verbalize it. And the Hakamashmon, and it's coming to teach you here. Maybe it's coming to teach you here. Kol and Divlev. That you don't have to verbalize it. That even those just in your heart, that's good enough. Nothing to do with changing your mind. Shmuel agrees, by the way, Kol the Divlev. It says clearly in the pasuk that you can be generous in your heart, but he believes it's limited only to charity. That when you give charity and you think in your mind, I'm going to give so much tzedakah. That's it. It's a promise. You have to abide by your thought. But all other nadarim, you have to express it openly, says Shmuel, and maybe the pasuk tell you don't have to. However, then Gemara continues. Even if Rabbi Yeshua's nephew, if Rabbi nephew said, it says, Dover said, I'll swear and I will fulfill it. So therefore, you're saying as if he had a choice whether to fulfill it or not, because he can always annul it. No. Maybe the followers of Gidul Marav. The Amar of Gidul Marav, but Gidul is the name of Rav. Minayin, how do you know it's a mitzvah? How do you know that we encourage, even though the Gemara Nadarim says you should not make any vows? It's a terrible thing to make a vow because you're putting yourself in a predicament. And what happens if you don't follow it? You committed a sin. Not a good idea. In fact, we discourage it. But how do you know when it comes to mitzvahs, it's actually a good idea? How do you know it's a good idea to make a vow to encourage you, to motivate you to do the mitzvah? It says, Nishbati, I swore to fulfill a mitzvah. To fulfill your positive mitzvahs. So we see it's a good thing. Now, there's a big argument in the Rishonim that if you make a vow to perform a mitzvah, I make a vow, I'll put on tefillin every day. We already swore in Har Sinai we're going to put on tefillin every day. So does this vow add anything to it, or really just empty words? It has no validity. So the Ran says that when you make a vow, it does add another layer, because when you make a vow, you have to fulfill your words. For example, when you put on tefillin, it's a positive mitzvah. But when you make a vow that you'll put on tefillin, if you don't put on tefillin, not only have you violated the positive mitzvah, you have also violated now a negative mitzvah, which says, that you have to keep your words and don't break your word. So that's what the Ran's view is. It says right here, I make a shvur to fulfill mitzvah. So we see that it adds, it augments your responsibility. However, others say that if you make a shvur to do a mitzvah, the shvuah doesn't work, doesn't function, doesn't do anything. And Tosfos says clearly here, what's the point of making a shvuah? He says because you're mentioning Hashem's name, and by mentioning Hashem's name, that motivates you. So it's not the shvuah itself, because the shvuah is empty phrases. It's the fact that you're using Hashem's name that when you make a shvuah, so that is what motivates you. So bottom line is, we have nothing. We're Daf Yud Amud Aleph. We're about 10 lines from the bottom. We're trying to work out. The Mishnah says there's a number of laws that we have, but are very vague in the Torah. We don't really have a basis for the Torah. The first one is that you can annul your vows. And the Gemara brings a brayso. We have 5 different opinions where we have a basis. We reject the 4 of them, but the last one was Shmuel, was an Amoira. And Shmuel said, it says, Lo yachel devarei, he shouldn't breach his words, but somebody else can. A bezdin can come along and annul your vow. Says the Gemara. Ella de Shmuel, about 7 lines at the bottom of the page. Shmuel, less le pircha, but Shmuel's proof you cannot repudiate. Amar Rava says Rava. Vitema, other says Nach Bishchak. Hainu da amri inchi. We had the same thing in Gemara Megillah as well. This is what people say. Tova choda papalta charifta. It's better to have one little peppercorn than a whole basket full of melons. A basket full of melons is nice. It's good food, substantial, but it has no effect on everything else. One little peppercorn gives flavor to everything. Shmuel was an Amoira, so he's a peppercorn compared to the Tanaim, and yet his basis is far better than everybody else's. Then the Gemara continues. You said Hilchos Shabbos. You said the laws of Shabbos. That is, it's a mountain on a hill. There's hardly any psukim based, anything based at all in the Torah. Say, what are you talking about? Michta ksivin. There's so many psukim. It says you have to keep Shabbos. What do you mean? Says Gemara, like no, and we need it for the following case. Look at Rababa. We know there's a concept called a malacha she'enu tzricha leguf. You did the malacha and you had a mind to do the malacha, but you don't need it for the ultimate purpose, like they did it in the Mishkan. This is how Tosfos learns. For example, in the Mishkan, when they dug holes to store things. But you're digging a hole because you want the sand. So you want the malacha, but not for legufa, not for its ultimate purpose. Actually, the classical case is the Mishnah that we had in the Chagigah Daf in Shabbos, where Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Shimon have an argument. If you take hamaitzi meis, you take out a corpse from a house into the street. You're taking out the corpse because you want the house according to walk in, whatever it is, you're taking it out outside. So you're carrying, you definitely want to carry it outside, but you don't want the body. In the Mishkan, when they carried because they wanted that item itself. Here, you don't want the item. So therefore, it's a malacha she'einu tzricha leguf. Rashi actually has a different spin on it. Rashi says the definition of malacha she'einu tzricha leguf is, if I had a choice, I wouldn't have had, I would wish that this wouldn't have happened in the first place. I wish the person wouldn't have died. So it's a malacha she'einu tzricha leguf. Now that he died, I have to carry him outside, but rather he didn't die. And the same with the hole. I'd rather didn't have to dig a hole to get the sand. The sand was just there. But bottom line is, Rabbi Shimon says a malacha she'einu tzricha leguf is potter from the Torah, but also from the Rabbanon. Rabbi Yehuda says it's also completely. Says Rabbi somebody digs a hole in Shabbos, you're doing binding construction, an Easter in the Torah. But they ain't all you want is the sand, potter Allah, you potter. That's the rule that he says. So before we move on, we say, well, that would only follow Rab Shimon. Keman ki Rab Shimon. Doesn't that only follow Rab Shimon? A malacha that you don't need for its ultimate purpose, you are exempt. Says Gemara, no. Rabbi Abba's din works out according to everybody for different reasons, but it works out according to everybody. I feel the Rabbi Yehuda. It can even follow Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda holds a malacha she'einu tzricha leguf yichayiv, but hasa mesakin, hacha mekalkalu. Well, over there, he's mesakin. In other words, when does he argue? In the case of carrying out the corpse from your house. In the case of carrying up, you fixed up your house. You did a positive thing for your house. So therefore, he says, even though it's einu tzricha legufa, you're liable. Over here, you dug a hole in your house or in your courtyard, you just ruined it. So the malacha that you did was a mekalkel, and we know that a mekalkel is exempt on Shabbos. So the Gemara asks, so Micah Harlan says, what do you mean the law? This law of Shabbos is like a mountain on here? Because what is the basis for this law? This law is predicated on a principle. Meleches machsheves asr Torah. That when is the Torah asr malacha? Only if you had the right thoughts. No, you did it for the right purpose. Or you did it for a positive purpose, not just to destroy. And umeleches machsheves like Siv. Nowhere does the Torah say when it comes to laws of Shabbos that it has to be meleches machsheves. The only way we know is because the juxtaposition in the Torah, the laws of it says that they'll build a mishkan and vayakel, and you have to keep my Shabbos. So we say, well, whatever is in the mishkan, you shouldn't do on Shabbos. That's a mountain, on a hair. There is something there, but it's only on a hair. And what do you call it? It's interesting that you ask anybody, so all the principles of the laws of Shabbos, and this is such a major one, Meleches Machshavos, where would you find it? Automatically you would say Masechta Shabbos, where else? And it's amazing that it's found in Masechta Chagigah, not Masechta Shabbos. Such an important principle. This is what Tosha says in Krisis, that when it comes to the Gemara, Divrei Torah ani b'makom echad v'ashir b'makom achar. Sometimes it is impoverished in one place but rich somewhere else. That's why you have to learn Daf Yomi and go through the whole Shas, because every subject finds itself in many different Gemaras, and you have to collate all the Gemaras to be able to get to understand finally what the subject is. That's what the Rambam did. Went through the whole, everything, and he put it all together. There is an argument, Egli Tal, the Abnei Nezer, Sachat Shavagon, in his introduction in Egli Tal, talks about when we say you learn from the Mishkan, are we talking about the construction of the Mishkan, or we're talking about the service and the daily service in the Mishkan, the malachas that they did there? Anyway, next one is Chagigah. Now you tell me that Chagigah is not really found in the Torah. What do you mean it's not found in the Torah? We've been talking about Chagigah the whole time. And the Torah, we brought a pasuk, the Chagosim Oiseh Chag LaHashem. You have to celebrate it that day, and that's how we know that only one day of Yom Tov is obligation. The rest is only a catch-up or a make-up. What do you mean you don't know? So they want a Michtav Ksivan. It's written in the Torah. So well, no, I'll tell you what do we need it for the mountain on here. Look at the umbrella, Papa, by the discussion between a Papa and his teacher, Rabbi. How do you know? All the Torah says is Chagosim Oiseh Chag LaHashem. And you assume the Chagosim means what? Chagachag, you have to bring a carbon. Who said? I am Dilma Choygay Chagakam Rahman. You should celebrate, party, have a party and drink. Who said a carbon? And Tosha says a Choygay Chagam means dance. Maybe Simchas Torah should be celebrated for 7 days in Sukkot Beis Sheva. How do you know that it means a carbon? That's what a papa has to buy. So Abaye says back to the Papa, I'll tell you how I know. See, we find this expression, Moshe and Aaron went to Pari and said, look, Hashem said, I will let my people go, and the Yachoyguli Bamidbar. What do you think he means? They should dance in the wilderness. They should party. He wanted to bring kabbalas. He means dancing. Sabbath, he means kabbalas. Same thing by us. Chagaisim Isachag means a carbon. Says a Papa who said, maybe no. Maybe Taki wanted them to party. Well, see, there's another pasuk where Moshe Rabbeinu tells Parai that not only you can let us go, but also you will give us the animals that we can use for the kabbalas. Clear that midbar means we should bring kabbalas. So the same thing by Yom Tov. So the Gemara who said, maybe the Torah man not only should dance, but you should have barbecues. I want you to celebrate, eat meat and everything else before me. Don't do it kabbanas. Just have like Yom Tov, have a meal. So how do we know the Chagosim Oiseh Chag LaHashem means to bring a carbon Chagigah? So the Gemara, so Abaye answers again. You can't think so. There's another pasuk where the Eibusha says that when you bring the car, when it says on Pesach, do not leave behind the fats of my Chagai. Until the morning. If we're talking about just eating meat, what do you mean don't leave the fats till the morning? What is that all about? Obviously, we are talking about a carbon that has fats, and the fats go on the mizbeach. Oh, we don't eat fats. Must be because this is a regular animal. We don't eat the fats. We put the fats on the mizbeach. Obviously, talking about a carbon here. These are the choige who tarba the choige east places. When do we have fats on a carbon? Says Gemara, so Abaye says, so that Papa says again to Abaye. Who said? Maybe this is how you're supposed to. There's no carbon Chagigah at all. But remember, we learned before that people in Marbeya, and we learned before as well, people used to bring on Yom Tov and Chol Hamoed other animal sacrifices that they indebted themselves, committed themselves throughout the year. They bring it on Yom Tov. Maybe the Torah is telling you that those sacrifices that you're bringing on Yom Tov, make sure that you don't leave the fats overnight. Any carbon you bring during Yom Tov, not carbon Chagigah, but your other obligations, even though the carbon Chagigah itself can be eaten for 2 days and 1 night, and some of the other kabbanas you're bringing, not the the oil with the shlamim, can be eaten for 2 days and 1 night, but the fats that go on the mizbeach doesn't have that extension of 2 days and 1 night. They have to be brought on the mizbeach by night, and you shouldn't leave it till the following morning. So that's all he's telling you, that the other kabbanas, the associated kabbanas, make sure that you bring them at night. Nothing to do with carbon Chagigah. So Abaye says back, it can be. What are you telling me that only on Sukkot, only on Yom Tov, only on Pesach, on Yom Tov, you have to make sure your kabbanas are not there overnight, are not delayed overnight? Every carbon, no matter when you bring it, you have to make sure you bring it at night. So why only single out Yom Tov? Says the Gemara, so back to the puppet. So Habob is man chag hu lo yolin. Only those kabbalas you brought during Yom Tov, you have to make sure you don't leave them overnight. It's not true, because we know the pasuk says generally when you bring an oil on the mizbeach, kol halayla adabayke. It should be there on the night until the morning. That's it. You're not allowed to leave it for the following day. So Papa says again, no. Dilma, perhaps you're right. There's a mitzvah say to make sure you put it at night, but we added on Yom Tov, there's also a negative, a loisase. Dilma imahu havamina, I would have thought ahula asay, because I'm only for a positive mitzvah, high lalav. And now I'm telling you furthermore, there's also lav. But there's also lav. You shouldn't leave it until the morning. Maybe that's what's coming to tell you. The Gemara is telling you that all the other kabbalah you bring is a lav as well. So the Gemara, the lav, because we already have another pasuk. It says another pasuk. It says also lav that you shouldn't min habasar asher tizbach. You shouldn't leave anything in flesh. Don't leave anything beyond the morning. We already have a lav. So we have a lav. And I say, what are we adding here on Pesach? What is yolin chelev chagai? Obviously, we're talking about the karma chagigah. So again, why not? Maybe it comes out you have two lav in Nasei. If it's a karma chagigah, it makes sense. If it's a karma chagigah, maybe the Torah is telling you, we would have thought that all these lav in Nasei are only to do with the carbon oila, that the carbon oila has to be burned at night, but not everything else. And therefore, by chagigah, the Torah says, chagigah, don't leave it till the morning, and then we equate all the kabbanas to it. But if you're telling me that we're talking about all other kabbanas, then what do you need it for? We already have an asay and a lav and all that. Eli, you're right. You know how we know we bring a karma chagigah? Not from the pasuk b'chagoyis moed chag Hashem. Ela asi we learn Gzeir Shava midbar. Here it says Moshe Rabbeinu says the power of Yechoy Geliba midbar, right? You should celebrate the midbar. And it's talking about animals. It says there. And it says there, Hasvachim umincha higashtem li bamidbar. Did you bring me the Navi reprimands that we had a few days ago? The 40 years you're in the midbar, apart from Shevet Levi, did you bring me any kabbanas? You guys were all idol worshippers. You couldn't. So we see what it said by midbar here, talking about kabbanas. What it said by part of Yechoygli by midbar means kabbanas. And so we see the word Yechoygli means kabbanas. So when it says in the pasuk by Yom Tov, the chagoyis and moise chag lashem, we know it means chag means a karma chagigah. So the Gemara, so it's a Gzeir Shava. A Gzeir Shava is one of the 13 ways of learning. In fact, it's the strongest way of learning. You can't even make it up on your own. It has to be passed down from Moshe Rabbeinu on Sinai. So Maika Harin Hatluyim Besaida. So what does it mean? Like the mountain that's based on a hair. It's much more than a hair. Gzeir Shava is powerful. Says the Gemara, you know why? Because where does it say that the Navi reprimands them? That's Nevi'im. And divrei Torah medivrei Kabbalah lo yafidun. We have a rule in the beginning of Baba Kama, we do not use a Gzeir Shava to the Torah from Nevi'im because it's not on par. This is a Nevi'im and this is the Torah. And therefore, it's not a real Gzeir Shava, and that's why it's like a hair. That's the hair. It's more than nothing, it's something, but it's only a hair. The next thing we said was that it's me'ila. Me'ila is when you steal from the base, to you use something that was consecrated based on Mikdash. If it was b'mezid deliberate, then you chayiv misa. You're liable for death, but if it's according to some Tanaim, but if it's b'shoigig, if you did it inadvertently without knowing, then when you find out, you have to reimburse the Beis Hamikdash. You have to pay a penalty of 25%, and you bring a guilt offering, a carbon asham me'ilas. Bring an asham me'ilas. Says the Gemara, me'ilas michtav ksivin. It's written clearly in the Torah. Me'ilas written clearly in the Torah. So if Mila is written clearly in the Torah, what do you tell me? It's a mountain built on here. It says clearly in the Torah. Omar Rami Bachama says, it's a specific case. We learned in the following case. It goes as follows. Let's say there was a person. We have a general rule that you can appoint an agent, a proxy, to do things on your behalf. It's called a shliach. And the rule is that shliach shaladam kim moised. If a shliach does it on your behalf as if you did it yourself. We also have a rule that if it's an aveira, ein shliach l'dvar aveira. You cannot have a shliach, and why not? So we'll have in the Gemara Kedushin, either because we learn from the Torah the fact that we have two exceptions, so everywhere else there's no shliach. No, if I send you to go kill somebody, or if I send you to steal something, then the sender is not liable. The shliach, the agent, is liable. And the other reason is because it's pure logic. Divrei harav, divrei talmud, divrei mishemit. The sender can say, the Torah told you not to steal. Hashem, the master, told you not to steal. I told you to steal. I was sure that you would listen to the master and not to me. So therefore, one of the exceptions is Me'ilah. And here goes as follows. The sender had money in his house of the Hekdesh. He also had regular money, and he mixed the two together by mistake. And he sends off, he gave the shliach, somebody said, buy me a shirt. The shliach had no idea that he was doing anything wrong. The sender really didn't know he was doing anything wrong, and he gave the shliach, go buy me. So now when the shliach buys a shirt, he's going to take money from Hekdesh and give it to somebody else, right? That's Me'ilah, stealing. The rule is follows. The shliach carries out the shlichus. The sender committed the sin. In other words, yesh shliach l'dvar. Over here, we're going to blame the sender. If the shliach, the agent, varied, instead of buying a shirt, he bought him a pair of trousers. He didn't actually carry out the shlichus. He's no longer acting as a proxy. So the agent is working for himself in a certain way. So he didn't carry out the shlichus, and therefore shliach mo. The shliach is the one who is considered the stealer. Now think about it. The shliach, normally we have a rule that ain't shliach dvar aveira, and here we're saying that if he did the shlichus, the sender is liable. Now, but who did the aveira? Who committed the aveira? The agent, and yet we're holding liable the sender. Where does that come from? That's a mountain on a hill. If he carried out shlichus, why was he considered a moya? Why did the sender send a moya? This guy sins, another guy is liable. That's a mountain like on a hill. That's what the Gemara thinks right now. Rava says, Rava, my kusha, I don't see what's a big deal. Dilma shiny Me'ilah is an exception. The yalfa chet metruma. You think that it's an exception? It doesn't make sense. No, we have an overall pasuk. We have a gzera shav. One of the places, the origins of shlichus is from truma. That says the pasuk gam atem. You can send a shliach just like yourself. So, and says the word chet there, and says the word chet over here by when it comes to truma by Me'ilah. So we equate the two and we say that just like shlichus there works, shlichus here works. It just happens to be that every time you do Me'ilah, you're doing a sin. But shlichus works it, so we know that yes, shlichus v'avera. So it's not built on a here, it's built on a solid ground, on a gzera shava. The alpha chet b'truma mahas. I'm over there shlichus and over here you're doing a sin. So therefore you're liable. I'll tell you what the mountain on here is. The following case. What happens? Okay, the balabas gave you money. He didn't realize there was hekdesh money there, and you're going. Takes a day to travel to get to your place. A couple of hours later, the balabas realizes, "Oh, I put hekdesh money there. I gave him some hekdesh money." The moment the balabas realizes that this hekdesh money, he's no longer inadvertent. He's no longer a shogeg. He's actually now amazing. So therefore, he cannot be held liable for Me'ilah because he's amazing. The agent is still a shogeg. He has no idea. So in this case, who is held responsible? The shliach. But poor shliach, he had no idea, absolutely no idea. And that's the mountain on the here. It says here, Niska balabayis v'lo niska shliach. The balabas remembered, but the shliach didn't. Shliach mo. Then the shliach is held responsible. Now, l'chayda shliach anya. Look at the Gemara's expression there. You poor shliach. So Rachman said, this Nebuch, my ka'avid. What did he do? He had no idea he was doing anything wrong. This is an instance of a mountain that's hanging on a hair. There's an interesting argument between the Rambam and the Tur. If the way the Tzatz HaChoshen explains it, if a person sends an agent to give a get to his wife, and then while the agent was traveling, suddenly the person became a shaitan, which means he's indisposed and he's no longer capable of presenting a get to his wife, the husband. So the question, and there's an argument whether the get is still valid or not. And the way the Tzatz explains it, the argument is when you appoint an agent, is it like a power of attorney? You gave him all your abilities at that juncture, at that moment. So we don't care what happens to the sender afterwards if he becomes incapacitated. It doesn't matter. Or do we say, no, it's a constant, it's a living, it's dynamic. is happening all the time. So if sometime in the interim, the sender, the husband, became incapacitated, the shliach can no longer carry out a shlichus. Here it seems to be clear that the mishaleach it's constant, it's dynamic, and since in the middle he's no longer considered a moil because he did it on purpose, so then the shliach is now held accountable because he's no longer a shliach, he's no longer an agent. Seems to be a proof to that opinion. Anyway, Amar Ravashi said, you think that's so novel? My kusha. Let me ask you a question. Every mi'ila, what's mi'ila? Mi'ila is only if you weren't aware that this was Hegdish money. So you had no idea, yet we hold you responsible. So what's the big deal? What's the difference in this case and any other case? That's what mi'ila is all about. That's the structure of this particular sin that they did not know, and yet they're held accountable. My question, what's the big deal? Every time you spend money from Hegdish by mistake and you use it for your own purpose, you didn't know, and yet we hold you responsible. Elo Barabashi. I'll tell you what it's about. We need it. I look at it now, and we learn Notal Evan. Let's say you took a stone of Hegdish or Rabin. You just took it for yourself. You did not steal from Hegdish. But if you gave it to your friend, the fact that you gave it to your friend, that act of giving to your friend is already considered taking away from the domain of Hegdish. Humal, the person, the giver, he is considered stealing from Hegdish. But by the time you gave it to your friend, it's no longer Hegdish. When you steal from Hegdish, it now, if you did it by mistake, it becomes chulin. If you did it on purpose, it does not. If you did it on mistake, it becomes chulin. And therefore, your friend is no longer committing a sin because he's just using something of a beam that is chulin. Now, the simple question is, Mechdi, Mishkol Shakla, you took it. What's the difference if you took it? It belongs to the Beis HaMikdash. If you took it, what's the difference if you took it for yourself or you took it for your friend? Why, if you took it for yourself, we say, no mi'ila, but if you took it for your friend, what's the difference? Mali hu, mali chaveda. In both instances, you took it away from Hegdish. That's what a mountain is based on here. Says the Gemara, my kusha, why is that a problem? Dilma, perhaps, Kiddishmul, maybe this is talking about a specific case, and there's a major difference, a fundamental difference between if you did it for yourself or somebody else. We're talking about the Gabai. What's so special about the Hegdish appointed this person and said, we want you to take all these stones and all of these bricks, and I want you to mind it. So I want it to be in your reshus. You have control over it. So if he takes it for himself, he's not doing anything different. They gave it to him already, that he should be in control and give it back when they need it. So therefore, but if he gives it to a friend, that he had no permission to do. That's why there's a difference if he takes it for himself or to his friend. Says the Gemara. So therefore, it makes sense. It's not a mountain built on here. So Dimhacha begizber talking about a gabai hamisoidus that was given to him. The stones of the building, you should mind the cholhecha, the mancha, wherever it's lying. It's his own. It's in his domain. Elo says the Gemara, Missafe says the Gemara, we learn, you're right, you know what the novelty is? The next part. What about Bona B'Tzarech Beis? If you're a Gabbai, all it gives you the right is to mind it in your house, but not to use it. If you want to build it into your house, and right now we're assuming if you want to build a stone in your house, you have to chisel it out and make it smooth and everything else, so you actually made a change in it. And the moment you make a change, you did Me'ilah. So it says that if you built in your house, the person, the Gabbai, is still not considered as if he stole it, unless he dwells there. You're actually benefiting. You're having hana from something that belongs to Hegdish, then you're violated. So there's two ways of doing Milah. One is changing domains. Doesn't matter whether you have any pleasure from it or not. The moment you change, you took it out of the Rishus of Hegdish, you're a Ganef. The other one is that even if you did not take it out of Hegdish, but if you're taking personal enjoyment from it, that is considered Milah. So when you place it on the things, only if you took personal enjoyment is it Milah. The question is why. The moment you put it inside your wall and your ceiling, you're ready for a Ganef. Why is it that only if you had benefit from it? You change the stone, mali dor, mali loida. Who cares if you lived there and enjoyed it or not? That's why that's why it's a mountain sitting, resting on a hair. Says more again. No, it makes sense. My cushion. What's the problem? You think that it's talking about you chiseled out the stone, you made a change. We're talking about a complete stone, you did nothing to it. You have a skylight, the sun is scorching hot, and you're sitting there in the living room, so you place the stone to block out the sun. And therefore you made no change in the stone. So you didn't steal from Hegdish. But if you're sitting directly under the stone and you're having some benefit, then you're a ganef. Makes perfect sense. There's no mountain sitting in here. Well, my cushion, he placed it on your skylight. If you lived under it, okay, in. Then you're enjoying Hegdish Yirgana. But loy darbe, if you did not live under it, loy. So Gemara says again, where is the case of Mila? A mountain on here. It's going like Rava. What was Rava's case? The case where you were the agent and you went to buy a shirt, and we were saying that if the balabas remembered, then the agent is responsible. But if the balabas didn't remember, then the balabas was responsible. The kashalach, you said, and we said, wow, if the balabas knew and the agent had no idea, we're holding the agent responsible. And you said there's nothing novel about that. That's the whole meal. And meal is always in a case where you didn't know. Still, there's a difference. You said, every time you're stealing from Hegdish, you're talking about a case you didn't know. No. Generally, he's talking about you knew that you had money of Hegdish in your house. You just weren't careful. You were a little bit negligent. So therefore, we hold you responsible. What kind of excuse is that? You knew you had Hegdish money. You should have been more careful. But you should have been more careful. Therefore, it makes sense that you hold you responsible. In this case over here, the agent was given money, and he had no inkling that there was Hegdish money involved there. He went off to do whatever his errand was. But at the moment the Mishalech remembers, the agent is held responsible. Here, it's totally not his fault. In fact, it's not a shagig. This is like an oinus. Totally not his fault. Did he know? Did he have an inkling? That's why it's a mountain under here, because we don't have any real logic to it. We have no real basis to it, but this is how it's passed down from Moshe Sinai. Okay, we'll stop here. Have a Shavuot Tov, everybody.